Spaceflight Simulator has many mysteries. Are rockets alive? Where are the outer planets? Why are there no humans? At the end of this video you will know all of that and more. Way more, because with the help of my Discord server I created a Spaceflight Simulator Iceberg with over 100 entries. Before we start I need to explain what iceberg charts are. At the top you have really well known stuff, things like, did you know you can visit other planets? Yes, I did know that. That's the point of the game. Then as you go down you get more obscure stuff, things like there used to be electricity in the game, and then at the very bottom we get stuff like
we are living in an apocalyptic wasteland trying to prevent the extinction of humanity.
It gets really crazy. And the cool thing about this chart in specific is that every layer builds on top of the previous one. So in layer 2 I say some planets are missing, and then in layer 6 I explain how that proves the sun is actually a giant black hole. And the best thing is that basically all of the theories in this entire chart combine into one giant theory at the end, which I've blurred out for now because if I showed it to you right now you would call me crazy. You wouldn't believe it. But when I show to you after explaining all the other entries, you will be convinced too. Also, if you're wondering who this woman is and what these numbers mean, one of the last entries on the iceberg, Cool Space, goes into it and it's very creepy, so you definitely don't want to miss that one. We start with celestial objects. This refers to there being planets and moons that you can visit. Like I said, it starts really basic. Encounters are when your rocket reaches a celestial object, like a planet or a moon. Stef Moroina, or Stefo Mai Moroina, is the creator of SFS. Not much is known about him, other than that he's male, 22 years old and lives in Slovenia. To any SFS veteran, getting into orbit is trivially easy, but the orbit tutorial uploaded by Stef himself has over 7 million views. This is probably the first SFS video most of us watched, as it is linked in the game itself. As we all know, SFS is free on mobile, so how does it earn money? Surprisingly, it doesn't have ads, which is a good thing. Could you imagine? Your fuel tank is empty, watch an ad to refill it. That would be terrible. Instead you can buy DLC, that gives you stuff like more planets, extra items and cheats. All of the DLC together costs $12, which brings us to the next item. The Steam version for PC costs $12, but it comes with all the DLC unlocked, making it the same price as the full mobile game. In career mode you start with only a few parts unlocked. You need to complete goals to earn money, which you can then use to unlock new parts. This adds progression to the game. Sandbox mode is like career mode, but with infinite money and all parts unlocked. Neither of these are available on the PC version. Aww. Realistic difficulty makes the game a lot more difficult, making the planets 20 times bigger than normal difficulty. However, to make up for this the engines are a bit more efficient. You can paint parts to give them different colors or patterns. We've all made mistakes that completely destroy our rockets and thought, where is the undo button? Well, the undo and redo buttons used to exist, but they were removed for an unknown reason. And the last of layer 1. BP please, BP please, BP please, please, BP. BP stands for blueprint, and this entry refers to the fact that anytime anyone posts a screenshot of anything they build, 100 people will instantly reply, BP please, please, BP. Blueprint, please give us a blueprint, BP please. It's probably the most common phrase in SFS communities. That was layer 1, now let's move on to layer 2. I just explained what an encounter was whenever your rocket encounters a celestial object. When your rocket encounters another rocket instead of a celestial object, it's not called an encounter, it's called a rendezvous, which is French for encounter. BP editing is the practice of going into the game files to edit blueprints of rockets. This can give you impossible rockets with parts that are rotated weirdly, bigger parts, overlapping parts and stuff like that. Most really impressive builds are made using BP editing because it simply gives you so many more options. Cheats are actually a paid DLC on mobile but are free on PC. They let you add infinite fuel, turn off air resistance, turn off gravity and other things like that. Infinite build area is a cheat, but for some reason it's sold as a separate DLC. If you want to make two parts overlap without cheats or BP editing, you can try part clipping, a glitch where by selecting and moving items in the right order you can get two parts in the same place without cheats. Missing planets refers to the fact that there are only 5 planets in SFS. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars and Jupiter. The so-called outer planets, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune, are not in the game. Luckily there are custom solar systems, user-made solar systems that often do include those planets, as well as more moons and sometimes even fictional planets. Using BP editing you can stretch objects to be bigger, but this turned out to be very overpowered. Since the strength of an engine depends on its size, but the fuel usage is constant, you can get extremely good engines by stretching smaller engines to be bigger, as they will have the power output of a big engine but the fuel consumption of a small one. If BP editing and custom solar systems aren't enough, you can use a mod loader to add mods to the game. The transfer window, which is automatically calculated by the game, is the optimal moment to accelerate or decelerate in order to encounter or rendezvous with your target. In career mode, there is a building called the Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB, which is presumably where the rockets are built. Water wheels refers to the fact that a box of wheels behaves kind of like a fluid. If you've ever wondered why solar panels are in the game, that's because electricity used to be in the game. Iron engines and wheels used to cost electricity, and there also used to be batteries, but those were removed. Another removed feature is world slots. You can now make as many worlds as you want, but that wasn't always the case. You used to only have 4 slots, which meant that you could only have 4 worlds at a time. A little known feature of SFS is that if you zoom in as far as you can, you will always zoom in exactly on the center of mass of the rocket. Made on Earth by humans is what's written on all the probes, and it's a reference to the car Elon Musk sent into space, which has the same message. In SFS it's always day, no matter what side of the planet you're on. It's also always the same temperature on every planet, so you can send a probe to Venus without it instantly burning. And the universe is empty. No matter how far you fly, you will never find anything outside of our solar system. These 3 things aren't that interesting on their own, but they were added to the iceberg because some theories on the deeper layers will reference them. Periapsis and apoapsis. These 2 terms from real spaceflight are very important to remember, because basically all orbital maneuvers in the iceberg use them. If a satellite is orbiting a planet, the periapsis is the point in which it's closest to the planet, and the apoapsis is the point where it's the furthest away. The first orbital maneuver we have is the most simple one, the Hohmann transfer, which basically just means you speed up at one part so the other side of the orbit will go further away, and then when you're on the other side you speed up again so the original side will also go further away, and then the height of the orbit will have increased. Separation force refers to the fact that you can launch objects sideways by increasing the separation force of separators. Cars are in the iceberg because building a car is probably one of the first things everyone does after making a simple rocket. SFS of course has a pretty big community. The original community was on the forum, but the forum has completely died, getting maybe a couple posts per month. Instead, everyone is now using the SFS Discord with over 50,000 members, which is a lot. There's also a lot of SFS content on YouTube. For example, the video you're watching right now, which took a lot of effort to make, so don't forget to like and subscribe. The most viewed SFS video is SpaceX Falcon Heavy Rocket Factory in Spaceflight Simulator by SFS Eagle, with almost 11 million views. The most subscribed SFS channel is Neutralizer, with just over 100,000 subscribers. The most viewed SFS channel is Space E, formerly known as Space Epically 999, with a total of over 42 million views. It is interesting how the channels with the most viewed video, the most total views and the most subscribers are all different. And they are all different from the channel with the best videos. And that was layer 2, so now let's move on to layer 3. First we have hinges. This is when you use a wheel to let part of a rocket rotate independently. Next we have time warp physics. This basically refers to the fact that collision physics are not calculated during time warp. This basically means that if a rocket has multiple unconnected parts and you time warp, everything will break. Those time warp physics break hinges, which is why we have dockable hinges, hinges with docking ports, so they can be connected before time warp. Another entry about docking ports is docking ports mismatch. You can take 2 docking ports of different sizes and connect them. Acarii drives are really complicated to explain, but I'll try to keep it simple. If docking ports are close to each other, they become slightly magnetic and snap to each other to make docking easier. Acarii drives are literally just this troll physics image, but with docking ports. Unfortunately, they no longer work in the newest update. In real life, the Earth has huge mountains and deep oceans, but in SFS, the Earth is almost entirely smooth. Wheels can take way more fall damage than any other part, meaning that if you put wheels on top of your rocket, you will way more often survive small crashes. Because there's no built-in functionality for oceans, what some people do is they create a second planet on the exact same spot as Earth of the same size and they make it blue. And because of that, hills will stick out from it while valleys are no longer visible, creating the illusion of an ocean. Fuel pipes are a planned feature which will let you automatically move fuel between different tanks. Another planned update is the Outer Planets update. I already talked earlier about how they were missing, but this is actually one of the most wanted updates. The reason so many people are angry that this isn't in the game yet is because some players have made custom solar systems with all the outer planets in a couple of days. So why can't the developers do that too? A removed feature, on the other hand, is the adapter. Right now, if you place fuel tanks of different sizes on top of each other, they automatically connect. But this wasn't always the case. You used to need adapters to connect them, but this was removed because they now do it automatically. 17 years old is talking about how Stef was only 17 years old when he made SFS, which is crazy. He was the same age as me and he had already created a successful video game with millions of downloads and was earning lots of money. Meanwhile, my biggest accomplishment in life is creating this iceberg. In one of Stef's 4-year-old videos, he speaks terrible English.
So, a lot of you are probably wondering...
But in a video from 1 year ago, he speaks perfect English.
Here's what's new in Spaceflight Simulator Update 1.
This has led some to speculate that Stef might have taken English lessons. Right now in the game there's just a VAB, but there used to be 3 buildings together, which were called the Space Center. The shop and achievements were different buildings for some reason, but now they are all integrated into the VAB. Speaking of the VAB, the real vehicle assembly building. NASA has a real building called the vehicle assembly building, so the VAB in SFS was probably based on that. Remember how you could change the color and texture of components? Some textures are only available through BP editing. The rotation slingshot is a technique in which you spin a long rocket really fast and then eject a capsule that's on the side of it. This will launch it really quickly. The downside is that this is basically impossible to control. Gravity assists are an orbital maneuver in which you use the gravity of a planet to alter the course or speed of your trajectory without spending fuel. Aerobraking is a technique in which you place the periapsis, the nearest part of the orbit, slightly inside the atmosphere. If done correctly, this will make air resistance slow it down slightly without the rocket crashing into the planet. This is a great way to reduce speed without spending too much fuel. All moons of Jupiter have the exact same 2 achievements, captured into low orbit and landed on the surface. Of course there isn't much else to do in a spaceflight game, but many users still want more diverse or unique achievements. Solid rocket boosters and peregrine engines are only available in career and sandbox mode, not in classic mode. The solid rocket booster in particular is quite interesting, as it's a booster that can't be turned off once it's started. There are differences between the mobile version and the PC version of the game. For example, the mobile version has DLC while the PC version doesn't, and the PC version also doesn't have career mode or sandbox mode. When you click on a probe, music plays. Normal rockets launch using big engines, which then detach and fall down. They have multiple stages. SS2O rockets, or single stage to orbit rockets, are rockets which don't do this. They only have a single stage. For any other game, whether it's Minecraft or Roblox or Fortnite, the biggest YouTubers all talk in their videos. But when it comes to Spaceflight Simulator, basically no YouTubers talk. Almost all of them are silent. I'm one of the exceptions, I'm talking right now, and I don't know why most other channels don't. And then the last layer 3 entry. SFS copied KSP. KSP, or Kerbal Space Program, is a game in which you build rockets and try to get to other planets. Sound familiar? And it was released in 2011. The biggest difference between KSP and SFS is that KSP is 3D, leading many to view Spaceflight Simulator as a 2D clone of KSP. That was layer 3, now let's move on to layer 4. On layer 4 we start with sea level optimized engines. In a YouTube comment, Stef said he was planning on adding sea level optimized engines, meaning we might see more support for terrestrial vehicles such as planes or cars in the future. Another future feature Stef has talked about is astronauts that will be able to go out of the rocket and do extra vehicular activity, things like repairs and construction in space. Speaking of Stef, different Stef spellings exist. Sometimes he calls himself Stef Moroina with a Y, sometimes Stef Moroina with a J, sometimes he even calls himself Stefo Moroina. Stef uploaded a video showcasing a rocket landing on the surface of one of Mars' moons, but it wasn't added yet at the time, so Stef quickly unlisted it after realizing it was a spoiler. At the time this led to a lot of speculation as to why it was removed, but now we know. The probe imposter theory says that if you put a probe on a fuel tank with 2 ion engines, it looks suspiciously like an imposter from Among Us. According to some, this is not a coincidence. I personally disagree, I do think this was just a coincidence, and Stef didn't purposely add this. Unless, of course, Stef is sus. Most rockets break on impact, but some rockets break on impact. Lithobraking is making a rocket with a shell strong enough that you can just crash into the planet and survive. This is usually done using construction blocks. The bi-elliptic transfer is basically a more complicated version of the Hohmann transfer. I don't know the exact differences because I'm not a rocket scientist, but the bi-elliptic transfer takes 3 accelerations, whereas the Hohmann transfer only takes 2. This is also the maneuver the automatic transfer window calculator uses. Space construction is what you do when you want to build a rocket or space station too big to launch from Earth. You build it in separate parts which are then transported into space individually where they are connected. This is talking about the fact that fuel can be transferred between different tanks of the same rocket. A lot of people don't know this is possible, and neither did I until I accidentally did it. However, since fuel pipes haven't been added yet, no one knows how exactly it is transferred. A refueling station is basically the combination of the previous 2 entries, fuel transfer and space construction. You launch fuel tanks into space and then rockets can refuel once they're in space. This is a great way to get out further, because leaving the Earth actually costs a lot of fuel. This theory states that SFS isn't a 2D KSP clone, but KSP is a 3D SFS clone. The only problem with this theory is that it would require time travel, as KSP was released 6 years before SFS. At the start of this layer we talked about future features like sea level engines and astronauts, but one feature that's not going to be added is multiplayer. That wouldn't work because multiplayer and time skipping are incompatible, and no one wants to wait 3 months for their rocket to arrive on Mars. That multiplayer isn't in the game hasn't stopped players from attempting to do so. One way people do multiplayer is by playing in their own separate worlds and merging the files, so space stations and rockets from other people are visible in your world. A more common way to play together is through roleplay. Players basically all play in their own world but act like everything is happening in one world to create a story. Next up we have two glitches. Firstly the farlands. If you get far away enough from the sun, the game will start to break and everything will look and act weird. We're lucky the farlands don't exist in real life because getting trapped in here would be awful. Secondly, the Deimos hole. For a long time there was a huge hole in Deimos, one of Mars's moons. If you tried to land there, you would slowly sink into the planet and after a while your rocket would break or the game would crash. Bird names refers to a peculiarity in the 1.4 update. The Titan engine used to be called the Big Falcon engine, but in 1.4 it was changed. So they removed the name of a bird. But in 1.4 the RB-48 rocket was renamed to the Hawk engine. So they also added the name of the bird. Maybe Stef for some reason wants to always have one and only one bird name in the game. I don't know why you would want that, but it's fun to think about. In career mode there is a VAB, but in classic mode the building is nowhere to be found. This begs the question, if classic mode doesn't have a vehicle assembly building, where are the vehicles assembled? The radioisotope electric generator added in 1.3.5 used to have the radiation hazard symbol on it, but in 1.5 it was removed. However, these generators are a radiation hazard in real life, which creates the question, why was it removed? Some theories on this will be addressed later. Then the last entry of layer 4. Most people see SFS and think the game being 2D is just for gameplay reasons, and it's actually set in a 3D universe. But this theory states, what if the world actually is 2D? It might not seem like much, but this might help solve the issue of it always being day, and in layer 5 I will explain why that's the case. In layer 5 we have the extra dimensional light theory. It goes like this. It's always day, but that wouldn't happen if the sun was a light source, because then it would be night on the opposite side of the planet. What if the 2D world theory is true, and the sun is not a light source at all? Instead, a light source from the third dimension is shining down on the 2D universe, and that's why it can illuminate everywhere at once. Who clears the debris is one of the biggest mysteries in SFS. With the clear debris button, you can instantly destroy all debris with the press of a button. How does that work? Where does it go? How is it destroyed? An answer will be provided in layer 6, in the ultimate theory that's still blurred out because you still wouldn't believe it. But in a moment it will be revealed to you and you will be convinced. The multi-axis hinge is a very complicated hinge that can have objects on multiple sides. This is only possible using BP editing as it requires a lot of overlapping parts. Someone on Reddit claimed that the VAB in SFS wasn't based on the NASA one, but the other way around. As far as I can tell, this is mostly a joke theory, because the real VAB was built over 50 years before SFS was even released. So unless they're claiming NASA has time travel, I don't buy it. Using the clipping bug, you could make a super powered rocket by stacking multiple engines on top of each other. Stef made it so that if you do that right now, your rocket will just instantly explode. Unless, of course, you have the paid No Heat DLC. This caused a lot of controversy as a previously free feature was now locked behind a paywall. Someone on Reddit posted a creepy screenshot of the mission achievements that you get after a mission is done. Instead of normal achievements, it simply read This freaked many people out, as it's quite creepy, but many people think this is fake and he just edited the language files. I personally don't know. 3D models can refer to many things. Some people have created 3D models of their own rockets, and some have speculated about if a 3D version of SFS is one day going to be released. The one thing I want to talk about is the Chinese clone of SFS, which does use 3D models, but more about that on layer 6. Blue Earth is the observation that all of Earth is green in the normal view, but in the map view the Earth is blue. It was very difficult to find information on this, but apparently some users have reported hearing bird sounds in the game. However, there are no bird sounds in the game files. So what are those sounds? Nobody knows. We had the empty universe back in layer 2, but what if it's not true? What if the entire universe is in SFS? We simply don't know because the other stars are really far away, so far that we can never get there. You don't need life support systems and you can fly as long as you want. You could fly a rocket into orbit, wait 100 years, return, and you could still pilot it. Humans would have died by then, so this evokes some questions. The different species theory says that the reason you don't need food or life support is because it's not humans, but a different species piloting it. That doesn't need food, that doesn't need water, that doesn't need oxygen, it can just live forever. That's also why the radiation hazard sign was removed, because the other species is also immune to radiation. I don't know why this is because I'm not a physicist, but the Oberst effect basically says that accelerating is more efficient if you're already moving fast and you're moving the fastest at the periapsis. So if you want to reach a certain speed, you need to accelerate only at the periapsis. VEGA, or Venus Earth Gravity Assist, is an orbital maneuver which makes use of 3 gravity assists, 1 around Venus and 2 around Earth. By doing this you can get enough speed to reach Jupiter, and once they are added, the other outer planets as well. The Hawk Engine prototype theory says that the Hawk Engine looks like a smaller Titan engine, so maybe it's a prototype for the Titan engine. I'm not sure why this is so deep on the list, because it's basically just 2 engines look like each other. The What Lies Beyond project, started by 90 Senior, is an SFS story/roleplay project with the goal of letting multiple SFS YouTubers make content in the same universe. I can't explain it fully because that would take way too long, and I also don't know the full story, but there are multiple interstellar empires which are all in the Interstellar Council, and there's also humans and an AI. It's very complicated. The Clan Hub is something similar, except it's way more free. It's a roleplay Discord server and anyone can just join and create their own faction. And all these factions then go to war and trade and work together and stuff like that. Next up we have layer 6. This layer doesn't have many entries, but each entry is complicated. Luckily we have already been building up to it throughout the previous layers, so every theory is easy to explain. Like I said, you don't need food, you don't age, no humans are shown in the game, there are no houses on Earth. So what's the solution? Rockets are alive. That's right, rockets are alive. What if the rockets themselves are intelligent? This explains why you don't need to worry about life support. The rockets pilot themselves, they're artificial intelligence. Like I said in one of the previous layers, you can transfer fuel from one tank to the other without them being connected. The explanation for this is that there are portals inside the fuel tanks. The sun is really hot. Even if you have no heat damage enabled, flying into the sun will destroy your rocket. So I think the sun in SFS actually became hotter for some reason. This is why there is no nighttime. The sun is so bright that it illuminates the entire solar system. This also caused the dead Earth. Where's all the life on Earth? Everything except grass is dead. There are 2 theories on this. One says humans are still alive and you are their savior. You need to create a rocket so humanity can board them and then escape to another more habitable planet. The other is the one I just described. Humans are dead and intelligent machines now inhabit the planet. The entire time we've been talking about SFS Earth as if it's our normal Earth. But what if it's not? What if it's just a coincidence? There just happens to be another solar system with a blue planet, with a large moon, a red planet, a gas giant, things like that. This would explain all the differences, because it's not our solar system, it just happens to look like ours. As you know, Stef Moroina writes his name in multiple ways. Stef Moroina with a Y, with a J, Stefo Moroina, Stefo Mai Moroina, and everyone always thinks that these are the same person but spelled differently. But what if all of these are different people? This explains why his English got so much better. It didn't, it's just that one of the Stefs speaks bad English, the other speaks really good English. What if the reason there is no rest of the universe in SFS is because you are inside a black hole? For some reason, a black hole formed inside of the sun. This has now swallowed everything up until Jupiter. This perfectly explains why there are no outer planets or other solar systems. Those simply haven't been sucked up yet. A Chinese developer made a game that looks exactly like Spaceflight Simulator, but with 3D models. However, the gameplay is still 2D. This game has been criticized for its many bugs and ads. My Chinese pronunciation isn't the best because these characters make pronouncing even a simple word a nightmare, but I'll try my best. It's called Huojian Hangqian Moni Ki, which translates to Rocket Space Simulator. We should be happy we don't live in an alternate universe where this is the only SFS there is. That would be a nightmare. We only have 2 more entries to go. We have the final theory and cool space. I'll do cool space first. On the SFS wiki, multiple people have created their own space agencies. This is basically just the same roleplay as the Clan Hub or What Lies Beyond, only on the forums. One of these space agencies was Cool Space. The article was archived because the creator quit, but when the creator was asked why they quit, they said they didn't, and they linked a YouTube channel where it was supposed to continue. When you go to the channel, one of the most recent uploads is titled 20220504, which was the date it was uploaded. It's a 15-second video of a presumably Japanese woman wearing a mask, and she does not seem to be aware of the fact that she is being recorded. There's also videos about the Armenian-Azerbaijani War of 1920, the Hong Kong anthem, and a 40-second video of Big Ben striking. It's truly bizarre and I have no idea what kind of person would be behind this channel. And then we have the last entry on the iceberg, the theory you've all been waiting for. You are gold. This basically explains every mystery. Who builds the rockets in classic mode without a VAB? You do. You are god. You don't need a VAB. If there are no humans, who controls the rockets? You do. How can you clear all the debris in the entire universe with the press of a button? You are god. You can do that. Why is it day everywhere? Because that would be more convenient to you, the player. And since you are god, you can do that. The player is the god of the SFS universe. And to the player, SFS is nothing more than a game. A simulation. The player can do whatever they want, even altering the structure of reality itself by BP editing. You can add new planets, you can teleport rockets, you can speed up time. You are gold. So, that was a big video to make. This took a really long time to do, and it wouldn't have been possible without all the people who helped me in the Discord server. Special thanks to T-Rec, Cauldron, Spitfire08, An Unknown Wonder, Glitchworks, Cold Milkshake, Nino, Aaron506, Night SFS, your average cookie. Since it took so long to make, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!